Lately, my body has been hurting again.
To support her, we decided to temporarily move in with my in-laws. Thus began the days of being at the mercy of my mother-in-law's and brother-in-law's whims. Then, one day, while my husband was driving, he received a call from my mother-in-law. With poor signal reception, he switched to speaker mode.
Is she still alive? She's so stubborn.
If it weren't for me, she might have actually died.
Unaware that the call was connected, the two started a reckless conversation, and their malicious intentions quickly unraveled. Subsequently, they faced social repercussions for their outrageous behavior. My name is Kate Brown. I live happily with my husband Oliver and our beloved daughter Emma. Emma recently started kindergarten, and every day she seems so happy. Seeing her like that always brings a smile to my face. One day, my husband received a phone call from his mother, Mary.
Lately, my body has been hurting again,
she said weakly. Mary had suffered a stroke before, leaving slight paralysis in her limbs. However, it wasn't severe enough to greatly affect her daily life, as she usually managed with a cane without significant difficulty. According to her, the pain from those effects had started bothering her again recently.
With this kind of body, even daily life is becoming difficult. I'm getting older, and I worry about what might happen in case of any unforeseen events. I might not peacefully pass away like my husband.
Mary continued with a tone of anxiety.
I want to discuss something. Until Mom's health stabilizes, how about we all live at her house?
It's quite sudden. By the way, what about your brother? As far as I remember, my husband's brother, William, lives with her. However, she said William was currently busy with job hunting, and she feels uneasy relying solely on him. I was hesitant. To be honest, I've never been fond of my mother-in-law. She tends to be critical and has even bullied me at times. I'm not the only one who finds her difficult to get along with. Even my husband hasn't had the best relationship with his mother, Mary. Mary has always doted on her eldest son, William, treating my husband, the younger son, as if he were just an afterthought. When I brought this up, my husband responded with a pained expression.
That's true, but he's still my son.
I see. That's typical of Oliver, who is responsible and earnest. I decided to respect my husband's wishes and agreed to live with my in-law. Moving homes is quite a significant event. Fortunately, our home and my in-law's place aren't too far apart. This means there's no need for our daughter to change kindergartens. Moreover, our daughter seemed quite enthusiastic about the idea. With that in mind, I resolved to endure until my mother-in-law's health improves. Thus, we began our life at my in-law's house, but the burden on me turned out to be much greater than expected. First of all, their house is quite old and spacious, making household chores a real challenge. Cleaning takes much more time than usual. Additionally, the amount of cooking and laundry has nearly doubled. I had initially thought I would be providing support for my mother-in-law, but in reality, I ended up doing almost all of the household chores. While I worked diligently, my mother-in-law seemed to enjoy her time differently.
Emma, the sun's out. How about we go shopping together?
I want to ride the swings.
She would cheerfully take Emma out to play.
And then, William's painting won first prize.
Oh, really?
Hey. Are you even listening? The amazing part is coming up.
She continued endlessly with trivial stories about my brother-in-law's past achievements, while we ate tea and snacks. To be honest, I was extremely annoyed. She seemed perfectly fine. Where was this poor health she claimed? I gave my mother-in-law a suspicious glance. Suddenly, she started coughing as if startled. Was I just imagining her strange behavior? Well, I'll leave my complaints about my mother-in-law at that for now. Next, let's talk about my brother-in-law. He was quite a troublesome person too. Contrary to what I had heard, William was essentially a single, unemployed parasite living off his parent. His thoughts and actions were remarkably immature for a man in his 40s.
Kate, I'm hungry. Is my lunch ready yet? Kate, why didn't you wake me up? There was a TV show I wanted to watch.
I was burdened with taking care of him. Even Emma was willing to help with household chores. He acted as if he was entitled to have everything done for him. I'm not your wife or your mother. I was screaming in my mind. To make matters worse, there was something unsettling about the way he looked at me, sending chills down my spine. Because of the two of them, I was enduring a challenging life both physically and mentally. One night, a few relatives had gathered at my in-laws' house for a drinking party. I went upstairs to get a fan to improve the airflow in the room. Let's see, the fan should be around here somewhere.
Kate.
I turned around to find my brother-in-law standing behind me. With a sly grin, he said something unbelievable.
Why don't you dump that boring Oliver and start a new life with me?
I couldn't believe my ears. But it was clear I hadn't misheard. I saw my brother-in-law looking at me with a smirk, almost as if he was licking me. Perhaps fueled by alcohol, but regardless, it was an incredibly vile and disrespectful comment. You've been drinking too much. Even if it was a joke, it's not funny.
Oh. Is that so? Are you sure it's okay to reject me like that? I might just spill that secret to Oliver.
What are you talking about? I'm busy, so I'm leaving. I ignored him and tried to head downstairs, but suddenly, he forcefully grabbed my arm.
Come on, it's fine. I'm much better than Oliver.
Hey, stop it. I instinctively pushed my brother-in-law's hand away. In that moment, he was taken aback by the unexpected resistance and lost balance. He tumbled down the stairs, eventually hitting the back of his head against the wall with a groan of pain. Relatives and my husband rushed over upon hearing the commotion.
Hey, what happened?
Your brother slipped and...
Oh my goodness. He's got a bump on his head.
My mother-in-law shook my brother-in-law vigorously as she spoke. Meanwhile, the relatives calmed down my distraught mother-in-law and took my brother-in-law to another room for treatment. Amidst the commotion, the conflict between my brother-in-law and me was swept under the rug. I hesitated whether to discuss what my brother-in-law had said with my husband, but I decided to keep quiet for now so as not to cause unnecessary worry. I decided that if my brother-in-law's behavior escalated further, I would tell my husband. With this in mind, I walked towards the living room where everyone was gathered. As I approached, I noticed Emma standing in a corner of the hallway, looking at me with a concerned expression. Sorry to startle you. Did I wake you up? Should we go back to your bed?
Yeah,
I sensed a slightly odd atmosphere from my daughter's demeanor. However, since it was late at night, I decided not to delve deeper and walked her back to her room to put her to sleep. After that, I continued to endure a difficult life because of my mother-in-law and brother-in-law. Every day, I was forced to listen to my mother-in-law's boring stories, and I was burdened with taking care of my immature brother-in-law. I was filled with a strong desire to escape from it all. Since then, my brother-in-law has never approached me again. Perhaps he learned his lesson from my strong reaction. I continued to live at my in-laws' house, feeling reassured about that aspect. However, one day, another incident happened to me. I was having lunch as usual at my in-laws' house that day, and when I took a sip of soup, I suddenly felt dizzy. Shortly after, I was overwhelmed by intense nausea and difficulty breathing. I recognized this sensation. It was the symptoms of an allergic reaction. I have a severe peanut allergy, and even consuming a single peanut can cause me to have difficulty breathing. Luckily, my brother-in-law was at home, so we were able to call an ambulance immediately. Seeing me in distress, my brother-in-law hastily took out his smartphone, but his fingers seemed unsure and fumbling. It appeared he was panicking too much to remember the emergency number. I urgently told him 999, and he finally started pressing the buttons on his phone. Despite some hesitation, I was transported to the hospital by the ambulance my brother-in-law called, ultimately saving my life. On the hospital bed, I thanked my brother-in-law sincerely. "Thank you so much, William."
Yeah, really, thank you. You're a lifesaver.
Oliver held his brother's hand crying, and my brother-in-law replied awkwardly with an air of embarrassment.
No, I just did what anyone would do.
It was frustrating in a way, but it seemed even such a despicable person could be helpful when needed. I started to reconsider my brother-in-law just a little. However, alongside my gratitude, I also felt unsettled about him. Why did I have the allergic reaction? Afterwards, I stayed in the hospital for just one day for observation. The next day, I was discharged without any further issues. I returned home to my in-laws' house with my husband driving us back. In the car, my daughter looked concerned and asked,
Mom, are you okay?
"Yeah, I'm fine now. I'm sorry for worrying you."
When I heard you were taken to the hospital, I thought my heart was going to stop.
I thought I was careful with the food ingredients, though, I said, tilting my head slightly. At that moment, my husband's phone rang.
It's from my mom.
Since he was driving, he quickly switched to the speakerphone. However, due to poor reception, we struggled to make out her words on the other end.
Hello? Oh, that's strange.
A few seconds later, the connection stabilized, but it seemed she hadn't noticed. She spoke to my brother-in-law with a frustrated voice.
Looks like he hung up.
He can't even answer a phone. Oliver is completely useless.
Their conversation made us turn pale.
But anyway, is she still alive? She's so stubborn.
Mom, you shouldn't say things like that. If I hadn't been there, she could have really died.
It doesn't matter. It's only fair after she hurt my precious William.
Well, I think it served her right, though.
So, what are you going to do about Kate from now on?
Yeah, I'll try to hit on her again. I think I can make it this time. I think she fell for me after this incident. See, I'm her lifesaver, right?
They continued their dangerous conversation without realizing they were being heard. On the other hand, my husband and I stared at each other in disbelief. Afterwards, we returned to my in-laws' house later than planned.
You were quite late, weren't you?
Oliver, at least answer the phone. I wanted you to buy something from me.
The two welcomed us as usual. Meanwhile, my husband and I wore grim expressions. We stopped by the police station for a bit.
Police station? Did you lose something?
Emma, Mom and I need to talk about important things with Grandma and Uncle, so could you go to the other room for a bit?
Okay.
Then, our daughter went to the room. I held out my husband's phone towards the two who were bewildered. And then I played the recording of their conversation. Actually, at that moment, I had instinctively set my husband's phone to record mode. Instantly, both of them became flustered.
What?
Why do you have it?
I continued glaring at the two who looked embarrassed. How do you explain this?
Well, you see. It was just a joke. It was meant to tease you a little bit, for rejecting William.
Mom, seriously. Don't bring that up.
Brother-in-law panicked at the words his mother let slip, but it was already too late.
Ha! You rejected my brother? What are you talking about?
As I explained the situation to my husband, his gentle expression transformed into something fierce. He then questioned his mother and brother relentlessly. Faced with Oliver's intensity, the two of them eventually confessed everything. It turns out that my mother-in-law was trying to set me up with Mr. William. Moreover, my brother-in-law seemed enthusiastic about this plan. So, my mother-in-law lied about her health and called me over to the in-laws' home. Trying to make the younger brother's wife into the elder brother's fiancée seemed utterly insane, but when I heard the reason behind it, it sent chills down my spine even more. The reason was that she pitted William for being unmarried despite being the elder brother. It's a level of awfulness that makes it hard to believe they're even the same kind of human beings anymore. And so, as expected, the selfish plan of those two didn't succeed, and my brother-in-law clumsily fell down the stairs. It made me shudder as I recalled that time. At the same time, a certain phrase my brother-in-law had said keeps bothering me. What secret of mine were you using as blackmail? My brother-in-law reluctantly answered, glancing briefly at my husband.
It's about that. About $50,000 you've hidden.
It seems he was also after my personal assets. However, he couldn't have been more wrong. They apparently misunderstood that I was secretly making money in stocks or foreign exchange behind my husband's back. However, this money was earned from writing activities that have been my hobby since long ago. In other words, it's savings approved by my husband, not hidden assets or anything like that.
That money is important savings that you earned on your own. So use it whenever you feel you need to.
He had given his approval a long time ago. It seems my brother-in-law happened to see the passbook when he visited our home before. He then told my mother-in-law about it.
Why not just make her your wife?
Absolutely terrifying story. Anyway, their scheme came crashing down pretty quickly. It seems my mother-in-law, feeling resentful after I rejected my brother-in-law's advances and even caused him injury, had entered revenge mode. So, she collaborated with my brother-in-law to mix peanut powder into my lunch. Perhaps she planned to deal with the $50,000 later. However, my brother-in-law became frightened when he saw me suffering more than expected and hastily called an ambulance. By the way, apparently my mother-in-law had been trying to get the PIN for the passbook from Emma for a long time. Of course, there's no way our daughter would know the number, so her efforts were in vain.
Mommy is doing bad things to earn money. Grandma will take care of it. Oh, but keep it a secret from Mommy. If you tell her, she might get caught by the police.
My mother-in-law was feeding our daughter nonsense like. The mystery of my daughter's strange behavior towards me that day finally makes sense now.
Scaring your own granddaughter like that, what were you thinking? And trying to steal your own brother's wife? Aren't you ashamed? I always thought you were foolish, but this.
Oliver's fists trembled with anger and disbelief. Upon being wounded in his pride, my brother-in-law retorted angrily.
Hey, you're pretty cheeky. I'm way better looking than you, and if I'd met Kate first, she would have married me for sure.
My husband's anger flared up even more at his brother's words. However, there was someone else even more furious than my husband. Yes, it was me. Enough. Oliver is a decent human being unlike you. Even if the world turned upside down, I'd never marry a delusional guy like you. You narcissistic middle-aged man. Get a life. I realized I was unleashing a torrent of insults. Overwhelmed by my fierce tone and harsh words, my brother-in-law visibly shrank back. Then, I cleared my throat and calmly addressed both of them. I find your actions completely unacceptable. I almost died because of this, and I will file a criminal complaint for assault, so you better be prepared to pay damages.
We consulted with the police station earlier. They advised us to discuss it within the family first, but I don't even feel like talking about it with you anymore.
I can't believe you'd sue us.
Pressured by us, the two of them turned pale and knelt down. They started pleading in trembling voices, desperately trying to convince us to withdraw the lawsuit.
Wait. We didn't think it would get so serious.
Yeah. It was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. Please forgive us. We're family, right?
Upon hearing their pleas, my husband and I exchanged looks and discussed quietly. At that moment, Emma walked into the room. Perhaps she was curious about the commotion. Immediately, my mother-in-law talked to her with a fixed smile.
Emma, sweetheart. We're a bit busy right now, so why don't you go back to your room?
In that instant, I stopped my daughter. Did you tell Grandma Mommy has a peanut allergy?
Yeah. She asked me to tell her about Mommy, so I told her even one peanut stop her breathe and kill her.
I gently stroked my daughter's head and then turned to give a cold stare at the two of them. There's no room for sympathy here. Get punished socially. With that, the two of them were left stunned and collapsed right there in dismay. Afterwards, we hired a lawyer and formally sued my mother-in-law and brother-in-law for assault. Due to it being a family dispute, they didn't end up in jail, but they were required to pay around $15,000 in total for my medical expenses, compensation, and other costs. Of course, since both of them were living indulgent lifestyles without any savings to cover it, they ended up selling their family home to raise the money and reluctantly using it to make the payments. And so, with their house lost, here they were.
Well, with 5 of us now, that house would be a bit cramped.
Oliver, when are you going to start the expansion renovations?
Unbelievably, they were fully expecting to move into our house. They really were beyond belief. Of course, such a ridiculous idea wouldn't fly. What nonsense are you talking about?
Talk nonsense in your sleep.
Then my husband punched my brother-in-law. Presumably, All the pent-up frustration had finally exploded. Having been resoundingly rejected by us, the two hurriedly left. Later, we heard they rented a room in a rundown apartment. Apparently, my brother-in-law started working part-time to make ends meet, enduring difficult days to get by. On the other hand, we returned home after 6 months. Ah, what a peaceful atmosphere. I felt a wave of relief wash over me.
I'm sorry. It's my fault we decided to live together. I should have thought more carefully.
Don't worry about it. I love that serious side of you, which is why I married you. Yes, my husband often bears the brunt of things because of his serious nature. Nevertheless, it's exactly why I respect him so much. I continued speaking to my dejected husband. Seeing you punch your brother was quite brave and cool. Though violence isn't the answer, my husband smiled shyly and said, holding our daughter.
Yeah, you're right. By the way, how about we go out somewhere next week? Emma, where would you like to go?
The zoo.
Watching her smile joyfully, I savored the happiness in that moment. And I made a vow to continue saving that money for my daughter's future.